Well, hello, Lee. It's
Hi,
it's so
Margaret.
good. It's so good to see you, even though it's on the screen.
I know again, the one thing that's funny is that, of course, we have a bond, a relationship somehow through the airwaves, have never actually met in person. So that just shows you the power of technology, but also the state of mind and condition that we're in.
No, it's true. Well, you're one of my silver linings of
Thank you. It's
COVID-19,
mutual.
Lee,
It's
and
mutual.
thank you. So,
Absolutely.
Lee, we're coming off quite an emotional week,
Hmm.
uh, and I reached out to you on Thursday morning, and we talked a little bit, and we shared, and it was one of those times for me that was real and heartfelt because I met you truly where we started to develop our bond
Hmm.
was after the death of George Floyd,
That's right.
where I reached out to you and I said, Lee, we need you. Lee,
Mm.
help us. Will you guide us? Will you be our senior advisor for diversity, equity, and inclusion, for women in insurance, Million Women Mentors? And along the way, it's just grown.
Hmm.
The bond, the respect, the relationship, the intertwining. So thank you. That's my first. Thank you from my heart with great gratitude to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for leading us. Thank you for guiding us. Thank you for sharing with us in a time where we truly need guidance.
Mm.
Well,
Well, I
how
mean,
are how are you feeling, Lee? How are you feeling?
well, I mean, we need to blow kisses back and forth to each other. I'm serious because, this world has shown that it can be hard, it can be brutal at times, it can be uncaring, and unforgiving. And, again, having met largely by first by reputation and then striking up an accord and keeping it going and them trying to produce work out of it. I mean, that's significant. You are now a friend of mine. I'm a friend of yours, and we treat each other that way. And I think it's in that context, Margaret, that when the judge stepped to the bench, and I'm sure so many televisions were on, like mine was, and I was on the line with two other good friends and consultants, and we were about to start a meeting. But no, we can't start. We got to hear what this is going to be, and a collective shout of relief and kind of an exhalation from all three of us, two of them actually based in Chicago. But then this other feeling, Margaret, that what else is going to happen? And didn't
Mhm.
know at the moment that the young girl in Columbus, Ohio was being killed by police at the same time that the verdict was coming down. So there is this sense of yes, justice being done and finally being heard, but that's one example out of so many. And I guess that's the real lesson that I've learned is don't get too high or low on this because we don't know. Look at what's happening in state legislatures around voting rights, and even you can, in one particular state, if you happen to drive your car into a protesting group, you won't be held liable. I know I'm probably simplifying it, but my goodness, is that's where we are.
Right.
So I think there's and I can sense it from the people I talk to often, a lot of pent up energy to say, no, we're not going to go backwards. What happened Tuesday was seminal, an inflection point. But if they're going to push hard against, we're going to push hard for,
Right.
and see what happens. I hope we can be victorious.
No,
How
thank
do
you.
you how do you feel?
Well, I I feel the same way. What you said, I had a sense of relief. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel joy. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I was relieved. I'm still worried, as I talk to you and others in my trusted network. Um, I know that this is a victory,
Mm-hmm.
but it's one of those victories that keep we have to keep fighting, and we
Mm-hmm.
have to keep winning, because we can't just stop. It's not that moment where you say, oh, good, did that, move on. That's not one of these times. This is, I've used the metaphor of journey for everything that we've done in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it was a very important milestone in our journey. And it's one that's seminal, as you said. But now, what do we do with this? Right? Back to the call to action. What's next? What do we do next? And very much that's why I wanted to talk to you today. That's why I wanted to talk to you on Thursday. I wanted to say, what's next? How do we move forward, Lee? How do we take this moment, and what do we do? As we go forward? I think there's some healing that needs to happen. I think there's certainly action. And I think that, again, back to your wisdom and your guidance, we want to walk with you. I want to walk with you. I want to do with you. We've been saying, this is not the time for talk. This is the time for action. Whatever grassroots action it is, we've got to do it, and we've got to do it now. This is our moment. If we don't do it now, we're never going to do it.
Margaret, it's so important that you said it the way you did, because in my conversations leading up to the verdict, I mean, just think about just what's happened. This year isn't even halfway over yet. We've had people climbing the walls of Capitol Hill. We've had a verdict that will shape American jurisprudence and policing for decades. We are getting vaccinated in one arm or another, and then in India, they don't have enough oxygen to supply those people who are sick. And then there's climate change. We haven't even talked about glaciers melting. So, if anyone happens to want to put their head up under a rock, I guess that serves one purpose. I don't have to hear the news or tune in. But for those of us who are at least inclined to want to act, I think the key is, what do we say to those individuals, particularly in the insurance space? I'm telling professionals of all stripes. I just came off a call with a senior executive, happens to be a white male, and I'm doing some coaching and saying, look, here's how we can do this within your domain, within your spheres of influence and position, so that if you really want to produce change, you can do it. That's the kind of energy. The what next part is where I think that the greatest struggle is going to be. But with us and others, it's at Million Women Mentors. I mean, that's where the juice really is.
No. And Lee, I think you said it so well. There's an intertwining that's going on here right now. All of this is like this. It's like this. And anyone that tries to separate it, we're going to fail. If we don't look at it holistically. And it's one of my favorite words. Anybody that knows me, I'm always talking about holistic. And it's so true, though. Right. This is an intertwined moment. It's an intimate moment. It's a painful moment. And this is the raw conversations. Let's keep having them. For those people, and I hear it many times, and I'm sure you do too. Margaret, I don't know what to say, so I don't say anything. And all I've said is, I am not an expert at this, but what I tell them is that if you say nothing, then your silence is deafening. So I said, just try. Speak from your heart, how you're feeling. And if how you're feeling is, I feel awkward, I feel unsure, I don't know what to say, Lee, but I want to say something. That's better than saying nothing. And I think what it does is it makes us vulnerable. It makes us fully human. And one thing that I know as a silver lining of COVID, we've never been more raw and real with each other. We haven't talked in the business world in a holistic way. We just haven't. And now we do. because we're talking about mental health, and we're talking about, self-care, and we're talking about that we're sad and we're lonely. And this has been enough over the last 14 plus months. We're having those real conversations. We're seeing kids and dogs and babies and grandmas and grandpas, and how lovely that is. How lovely that I'm sitting here in my living room. I know your den. I know your office. I
Right.
know that space. I know that's Lee's space.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
Margaret's
yeah,
space. This is my space that
yeah,
makes me happy.
yeah.
I think the walls have tumbled down, and I don't want the walls to go up again. I
Mhm.
don't.
But it's so interesting because I've been, I got a little feng shui. You can't see it over here with some cacti, and because I look out this window every day, and you know what? It can't just be plain anymore. I've got to not just create a sense of beauty and purpose, but when I'm in here in this place, like everyone else has been, I'm zeroed in. This is where
Mhm.
I get to produce a result. And so when we do go back to work in some way, shape, or form, hybrid, remote plus, whatever it's going to be, it will be interesting to see if those lessons that have been learned, that sense of dealing with isolation, get disintegrate once you come back to whatever the real space or normal space is. But the other thing I think, Margaret, is that because of this, for those of us who've been fortunate enough to have the resources, to have screens and bandwidth, no bandwidth issues and multiple devices, I must have 4 screens up every day at least. For those of us who have been fortunate, returning back will be an adjustment, but it won't be the stark reality. We'll just kind of pick up and move over. But for so many others, whose lives have been completely turned upside down, what do they do? And
Right.
so I'm as concerned about along the journey, those people who are standing on the highway looking for a hitchhike, looking for a ride, seeing those who are walking as we whiz by. Do they have enough food? Do they have enough self-care? Who's picking up? The notion of safety nets right now has become important because of the COVID legislation and the infrastructure legislation that's in discussion, and how much should it be. And it's interesting because we're talking about this as if, and insurance is really important because we forget that a whole lot of people are underinsured, if not
Right.
uninsured, not just in their lives and their property, but their sense of well-being. They don't have a backup.
Right.
So one of the things we've got to do, I think, is to get into, we don't have to become social workers if we don't want to, but we can certainly be socially more active given our blessed state of being.
Yeah.
And if we can do that in collegiality and allyship, allegiance, alliance, well, maybe allegiance too, then I think there's a big shot because we are not up against just anything. We're up against a lot of stored beliefs that do not believe that you and I should be having this very conversation. The nerve of us to talk about intersectionality because you must be taking something away from me. And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to make it big enough so everybody can fit.
Right. Now, Lee, it's so pure and it's so true. And I think it goes back to what we're talking about, justice, and
Mm-hmm.
then having this discussion about social justice and equity,
Mm-hmm.
and framing our way forward. And you're right. I think I'd love to say it's all about quantum leaps. I don't believe it is. I
Yeah.
believe it's about small steps and
Right.
grassroots and small celebrating wins. Small, that we can, bring the story and the truth, the message, the goodness of insurance to people who do need it,
Mm-hmm.
and people who can find a home in this industry and be successful. Be successful,
Right.
because this industry, we need talent.
Mm-hmm.
And we are blessed to have a robust industry in insurance.
Mhm.
And there's nothing about luck with this. This is blessed. The insurance industry is healthy and it's
Mhm.
growing, and it needs talent. And creating the on ramps that you and I talk about, STEM talent, is a great way to do that. We need actuaries and we need data scientists and we need claims professionals. We need underwriters. We need loss control people. I mean,
Mhm.
we we have an industry that is so hungry for emerging talent, out of industry talent. It's the time, and this is where I think the words connection absolutely connect. That's where we get busy, and
Yeah.
that's where we start. We start in the grade schools, we go to the high
There you go.
schools, we work with the young men and women in colleges, and we wrap our arms around them virtually,
Mhm.
and we say, come on, you're welcome here, we need you.
Yeah.
This is the work that, to me, is our heritage work, Lee, and we need
Mhm.
others to join us. And I'm not ashamed to stand on the soapbox and ask for help. We need help,
Yeah.
and we need the volunteers, the men and women that will work alongside of us and get those on ramps built.
Yeah. It's so, boy, you just said so much. And it's funny as you were vocalizing, you're putting the words out there, the pictures are forming in my head around the conversations we have had about talent pipelines and so on. And, for anyone who wants to listen, we realize too that COVID has been, because I'm still doing work in education with a couple of charter schools and a school district that has had this school district in Pennsylvania, not that far from Philly, has a really, really hard record. Um, 9 out of 10 children in this district are not proficient in mathematics. 9 out of 10. That means they are not at grade level. The graduation rate from the high school, it's a public comprehensive high school, at one point was only in the 40% range. That meant 6 out of 10 kids weren't graduating on time from high school. So we can dangle in front of them great opportunities, but there's a huge gap between what they have just as basic sustaining needs and what this big future is. In fact, it looks almost like the boat is, sailing off into the horizon and they're stuck on a shore where there's going to be very little. And so I think the industry, with all of its largesse and profitability and influence and lobbying, could take more of a interest, I think, and must, to say, wait a minute, how do we fix this? Because these are going to be ultimately your clients, one way or another. They're going to either buy from you
Right.
or they may be repping for you, whatever it may be. But the other thing is, how does it serve any of us if you have a continually um, uh, deficient, and I hate to put that word out there, but marginalized group of individuals who aren't connected to the economy? It doesn't work.
Right.
And so that's been part of my work too, education transformation, reform, maybe, but most of it is how do we deliver? And Margaret, here's the last thing I'll say. COVID has not only affected us, putting us all on these 24, 27-inch screens. Look at these young people. Social dislocation, kids turning on the screen but not really attending school. I mean, there are districts chasing young people. At one point, I heard as many as 3 million children could not be accounted for in terms of attendance during COVID. What's their return to school going to be like? Imagine, and aren't enough teachers.
Right. And
Finding a math and science teacher right now for STEM is no mean feat. It's really a challenge.
no, the educators, they truly are heroes and
Mhm.
heroines. I mean, what they're doing, and the battle, literally the battle they're fighting every day. It's very true. I mean, And Lee, you know the work of the Actuarial Foundation, and it is near and dear to my heart
Mhm.
as the chair, near and dear to your heart. This is the kind of grassroots, when
Right.
we were in the classroom tutoring with our Math Motivators program, we pivoted. We moved all of that tutoring to the screen.
Right. Right.
It's a step,
Mhm.
and it's a strong step. And back to my celebrate the small wins and the
Yeah.
grassroots.
Mhm.
I can see a visual that we had from one of the virtual tutoring session of a young girl just smiling ear to ear with her mentor, her tutor, and they were having fun with math.
Mhm.
That's what
Mhm.
it's about.
Mhm.
That's what it's all about. But this is where it's all of our hands and all of our hearts have to get involved in this.
Yeah.
We have to find, we all have to find that place, that
Mhm.
space to do,
Yeah.
that space in that place to do, because everybody's busy and we know that. But you know what? You're not too busy to mentor.
Mentor
You're
either.
not too busy to
Mhm.
take that
Mhm.
that young woman, that young man under your wing and lift them up and to take those opportunities. And that's one of my call to action. Do one more thing. That's what
Right.
Grandma Margaret always said to me. You think you've done
Mhm.
everything you can do? Now
Yeah.
do one more thing.
Yeah, yeah. And on the receiving end of that, I think about so much about my father, God rest his soul, and my mother. My mother was a teacher for 40 years. My father's a self-made guy, an electrician, and working with him, and he got a high school diploma, but he also got his trade certificate in electricity. So, he was a full-fledged licensed contractor. Margaret, the number of times he would say, I want you to reach a station in life. And what he meant by that is I'll clear away all the brush and the debris so you can go forward. And as his firstborn, even bearing his name, I had no choice but to go to school and excel. And don't come home with like B's and C's. What do
Oh, wait.
you need to, that's your job.
Did your dad know my dad, Lee?
Oh my goodness. They must have had their own version of Zoom back
that
then.
that is exactly what I heard.
Mhm.
My mom and dad didn't go to college. But
Mhm.
there was never a doubt in my mind, my sister's mind, or my brother's mind that we were all going to go to
Oh
college.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And it was the same thing when I'd come back with the report card and I'd be so proud. And my dad would point to one letter and he'd go, "Well, what's this B,
B.
Margaret Ann? What's this
Yeah.
B?"
Oh boy.
And pushing me and lifting me to the next level because he knew that was what needed to be done.
So
And
so you
that
so,
was so fun. So I think your dad and my dad are up there smiling right now,
well
looking down.
so you're Margaret Ann and I'm Leroy David. So that when they call that second name, that's when you know you're in trouble.
Oh, absolutely. To this day,
Oh
when
yeah.
I hear my whole name, I have to do I
Oh
have
yeah.
to do this. I have to do this. And this is, these are the stories, right? The kitchen
Mhm.
table stories,
Mhm.
you know, that are going to continue on. I mean, these kids, they're going to tell the story of COVID-19
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
of to their children and their grandchildren. And these are moments that we didn't plan on taking this
Mm-mm.
COVID-19 journey.
Mhm.
None of us did.
Mhm.
But I think that we have a moral obligation to take these lessons learned and to do good with them.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a reason that we're on these screens right now. There's a reason. This did not happen by accident. It
No,
didn't.
I've always believed there are, obviously don't believe in any coincidences anyway. And so I think about this as, even as it unfolded, okay, so what are we going to do? Because I could sit here and wallow in it or figure out a way to translate what I was doing into something more productive and real. Never did I, why my wildest dreams realize that, we'd be still pushing this fight, but making some improvement. And that's where I guess if I have any, going back to the Derek Chauvin verdict and the George Floyd murder, is there a glimmer of hope for all of us? And that I've got to believe that, or else there's no reason to get up in the morning. I've got to believe that we can maybe even chip away at some of the old prejudices and biases. Why is it that we've got these mores and practices in place that have no applicability today? I hear more insurance executives struggling sometimes with what to do. Like, if something happens, do we need to do a statement again and again and again? Like, well, you can do that and keep churning out the PR, and or you can decide what changes you need to make internally. If you've got people who are just not with the game, even if they are a strong producer, maybe you've got to step to them to say, you're not bringing we want your whole self, but we also want you to bring everybody along. If you're a people manager or if you're
Right.
a technician, that you don't get to choose the parts that you want,
Right.
because we won't get anywhere. So
No. You're saying, what I feel and what I'm seeing, Lee. This is uncomfortable. We are going to have uncomfortable conversations,
mhm,
but if we don't push ourselves to have the uncomfortable conversations, to hold ourselves accountable, to
mhm,
be intentional, the change doesn't happen. It just, we don't snap our fingers.
right,
It doesn't work like that.
right,
And I think that your voice as a catalyst is is helpful. I mean, it's helpful. It's needed. Sometimes I'll say I know the right thing to do. But to hear it from someone else, to hear it from
mhm,
someone I trust and respect,
mhm,
you know what? Then
yeah,
I say, I've got to do that. I've got
yeah,
to step into my power and I can do this because it's in me. It's in me. But you're that you're that force, maybe not all the time. And maybe this comes back to, I always listen to the voice in my head.
mhm.
Lee, I'm blessed because you're one of the voices in my head.
Same here, same here.
My dad is one of those voices in my
Right,
head,
right.
whispering, do right, do good, push
Mhm.
yourself,
Push yourself, right, right.
push yourself.
That's again where I see the glimmer of, not glimmer of hope. It's more than that. But this sense that if we don't stay resilient and adaptive, then they'll just say, well, now that they're out of the way, we'll go back to whatever it is we've been doing. But I also think that those behind us have a much higher expectation, because they are like my kids, dating or married to somebody who is completely different than me, didn't have my same experience. One young fellow is a Ukrainian refugee.
Hmm.
And so when he comes to the house and he starts talking about his family experiences, it's different. And so what I've tried to do is say, let me make sure I zero in on, what do I hear that not just sounds like what I've gone through or my people went through, but tell me, are you a good person? Are you going to treat my daughter properly? How are you looking at life? And supporting him in a way that he might not even expect, because you can imagine, not only being the dad, and I can be a bit of a bear if I want to be, but it's also about saying, no, 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 I want you to be excellent at what you do. Do not cut anything short, and don't chintz on your potential. So explain to me what your potential is. And when you put questions like that to, especially, he's in his, early 40s, they've been told to do what we were told: go to school, get married or whatever, partner up, buy a house, smooth sailing. But we know that what they face, the 2 generations, 3 generations behind us, it's much more difficult, because depending on where you live, the water may not be clean, there may not be enough space, um, on and on and on. So I want to make sure that you're right. You said heritage, and I use the word legacy, and they are completely together. what stamp can we put on this? Or so they say, wait a minute, I've seen that, I've heard that before. And all I have to do is just click on something and I can hear it live. And now I've got that voice, that tape running in my head. Now that's something that I think we can look forward to producing.
No, I agree. And as you were talking, I did feel lifted. I'm going to tell you that that's a word, that is a hopeful word for me. It's an active word. We're lifting.
Yeah.
We're lifting as we climb.
Yeah.
And I learned that from my dear friend and my mentor and my colleague, Grace Cruz. Grace, and she is a mountain climber. And she, in her heart and in her soul, she is always lifting as she climbs. And so, Grace, I've learned from you. I learned from you, Lee. We learned together. And, I think that, on this journey that we're on, we have to keep trying. We're going to make mistakes. It's not perfect. There is no perfect. And for those people that think, that we can't do it because we can't be perfect, I say, try with us. Learn with us, make some mistakes with us. We're going to do it together.
That would be one admonition I would give to those behind us, because one of my kids played soccer and everybody got a trophy. And that's the thing, that sense of perfect. Well, I did it, so where's my gift? I did it, so where's my reward? Where's my recognition? How come I'm, you know what? At some point, I'd like to disabuse them of that notion, to say the people who really nailed it were the ones who did it under the cover of night, in anonymity, without fanfare, no press, no cameras. They just did it. And it's these small interactions, the kindnesses we show each other, the sense that somebody walking in and out of a 7-Eleven doesn't expect you to hold the door. See, some of it is that we've got to get away from everything being a big sweeping program to really personalize it. So I'm in touch with a lot of people that I not only went to school with 50 something years ago, but even students that I've had. I used to teach a grad course at Penn, and I hear from them from time to time. And it's so rewarding to just get into that exchange. Say, did what we cover in class in 2010 mean anything? And she says, absolutely. And let me tell you how. So I'm hoping that it's not about just doing it to, as I've heard multiple times today, tick the box, check the box, but that this is really a substantive, substantial moment for all of us. Yeah.
All I can say to that, Lee, is amen.
Amen.
It's a beautiful prayer. And it's an active prayer. That's another thing that I believe. Let's make this active. We're making it real. We have wonderful role models and guides. And you and Bonnie Boone and Kim Waller and Soraya Wright and Deidre. I lift you up. Susan Johnson, lift you up. Thank you. Kevin Henderson, thank you. I want to say, and I could go on and on with my gratitude, and I want to go on and on. We need all of the voices. We need to learn. We need to laugh together. We're going to stumble, but we're going to have a little bit of fun, I think, along the way, and we're going to celebrate every one of the wins.
Amen. Here we go. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
And you too.